It was this young psychiatrist who just opened his first practice. And sure enough, he had patients on the first day. Appointments came in, one after the next. Difficult patients. First one was suicidal. The next one was depressed. The next one spoke about his horrible childhood, abusive father. Another patient was in a terrible marriage. One load of problems after another. One set of tsaros after the next. By the time the day was over, he was just drenched in sweat from all of the tsaros, all of the difficulties that he heard, all of the pain. And so before he left the home, he goes to another office there, a veteran psychiatrist, and he says, how do you do it every single day? Today's my first day. I don't know how you do it. So much problems out there, so much difficulties. How do you sit and listen to this for hours after hours? To which the mentor said, and who listens? And who listens? That's the million-dollar question. Who listens? In recent times, we've become very familiar with a condition out there called attention deficit disorder, ADD. It's most often spoken about relating to children who have a difficulty focusing. When we grew up, you were just a kid. Today, every kid needs a label. So if you don't pass a test, it can't be because you didn't study. We're going to give you a label. So 75% of all kids today come out with labels. They have ADD. They need this, they need that in order to concentrate. So this idea of ADD, attention deficit disorder, which is a real condition for some, I wonder if perhaps we as a society, each in our own way, each in our own individual lives, might not be suffering from some form of ADD. Not so much in the physical sense, but more a spiritual ADD. Who listens? Who listens today? On one hand, we have people who may be too proud, too opinionated to listen to what others might have to say. To him I should listen? To that shmegegi? What does he know? I'm a smart guy. I'm a college graduate. I went to a better school than him. I'm a major success. I'm knowledgeable. I'm experienced. I'm capable of my own right. He's going to teach me something? You know, ethics of our fathers say, Ezehu chacham, who is truly wise? Halomed mikal adam, the one who opens themselves up to learning from every human being, that there's something everyone can teach us. There's so much we can learn from others, so much we can improve, so much we can enhance, so much we can elevate our lives if we put down our defenses and get off our high horses and open ourselves up to knowledge that others can give us. A big part of the problem is that people only hear what they want to hear. You know, I meet people sometimes, meet them in the market, meet them on the street, and they say, are you Rabbi Bryski? And I say, yes. You know, I go to your high holiday services at the Hyatt Hotel. I've been going for years. You know, this joke that you told 5 years ago, I've repeated it 1,000 times. And they go on telling me that joke verbatim, word for word for word. And then I normally say, do you remember the message of that sermon? They say, message? There was a message? I thought it was just, you were just a frustrated comedian. You didn't get a job as a comedian, so you did it as a rabbi. But there was a lot of good jokes. They were great jokes. You know, I wonder, maybe I should stop telling jokes at these sermons because it overshadows the message. Never mind. So there was this guy who had this favorite donut shop. He would go to this donut shop every single day. And when it came to the point where the big and tall shops no longer had clothing that fit him, he made that decision, no more donuts. No more donut shop. He came in to the donut man and he said, today is the last time you're going to see me. I made a resolution, no more. I gotta watch my health. I can't do it anymore. 3 days go by. He starts saying to himself, you know, maybe I was a bit too hasty there. Who says it's what God really wants me to do? After all, I didn't hear a voice saying no more donuts. So he decided to work out a signal with God. If I pull up at the donut shop and I find a parking space right away, that means that God says, it's okay, a donut won't kill you. The next day, he finds himself right by the counter, right by the donut shop, picking out his favorite donut again, and the fellow behind the counter said, didn't you tell me 3 days ago that that was going to be your last day? What happened? He says, I'll tell you the truth. I made this deal with God that he should send me a sign, a parking space right away, and if I find the parking space right away, I'll know it's no big deal. So the fellow says, and you find the parking space right away today? He said, yeah, I drove around the block 16 times, but I found one. So we human beings, we have this filtering system. If the message conforms to our wishes, we listen and we take heart. But if, God forbid, it's something that compels us to re-examine our lives, to reevaluate our priorities, or something which might interfere with our comforts or our agendas, then we don't want to hear it. And therefore, we don't hear it. Today there's another category of attention deficit disorder, and that's the noise factor. There's so much noise out there. There's so much stuff competing for our focus. I don't know about you, but I'm lost. For about 10 minutes there, I actually thought I was computer savvy. I remember when I learned how to send an email, I was so proud to be able to say, I sent an email. And for my wife to say, what's an email? You don't know what an email is. I sent an email. And then I knew how to use Microsoft Word, the first version. I knew how to download a PDF. I was Bill Gates, man. I was good. But now I think I'm about 8 centuries behind. You can't keep up. Not with the kids. They're so way ahead of us. Whoever thought that we would come to a time where the fax machine would be as archaic as a horse and buggy? I remember the first time I saw a fax machine. I was marveled, like, my goodness, you could put a paper in here and it comes out there. And today, what's a fax machine? It doesn't exist anymore. You can't even buy the paper for a fax machine. From these small gadgets, you can broadcast to the entire world wherever you are. You can send a message and the whole world can see it. It doesn't have wires anymore. It's all Bluetooth. Here, this is the newest gadget. I got this as a gift. I don't even know how to open it. There you go. Now we're all Secret Service agents. No wires, earpods, all Bluetooth. Nothing has to connect today. You're walking around the streets, you're talking, you're schmoozing. Everybody's talking to themselves wherever you go now. Forgive me, but it used to be once upon a time, if you were in the men's room and the guy in the stall next door spoke up, you knew what it was all about. The guy realized a little too late that he had a problem. So and you would rip a few sheets of toilet paper and you would slip it under the stall because he needed some toilet paper. Today, the voice is in the lavatory. It's a whole different story. By the time you wash your hands, the guy closed 2 deals and bought 3,000 shares of Amazon. There's so much noise out there. We have these TVs the size of the Great Wall of China. Growing up, you remember it was channel 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13 if you were in New York. That was it, and there was so many choices. Then cable came out, and you had 65 choices. Now it's 995 channels to think about. But that's, of course, not enough because you have Netflix that has thousands of more choices. No, Amazon Prime came along, thousands of more choices. Radio used to be, you had your dial. Now you have to have satellite radio and Sirius radio. There's so much noise coming at you from all sides. Today you can record every one of the weekend's 93 football games and not miss a single one, and you can fast forward and rewind. You can go through. Today you can fast forward through live TV somehow. I don't know how that's possible. If it's live, how do you fast forward? But you can do it. There's nothing you can't do today. We're so wired. We're so digitized. We have so much technology. There's so much communication and information at our fingertips, and it's all good. It's great. We can channel, we can talk to the world. But at the same time, you would think that with all of this, we would have become so much better at absorbing, at listening. But the exact opposite is what's happening. We're so inundated with noise that we simply don't know how to listen, how to truly listen anymore. Because we're sitting, we're typing, we're emailing, we're using those thumbs, we're messaging, we're blogging, we're Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat, and we're flipping, and you got CNN and you got Fox News and MSNBC, and they're screaming and they're yelling and they're pointing and counterpointing, and everybody's screaming. Is anyone listening? Have we lost the ability to simply talk to each other like mention, like human beings? The old-fashioned debate where we share ideas and try to convince one another and try to understand one another. So some people might say, what for? Who needs communication and interaction with other people? I got 3 million gigabytes. That's all I need. To use computer vernacular, sometimes we're faced with system overload, where the brain is so filled with all of these seductive noises and distractions that there's just no room left. You can see a group at a restaurant, a family group or a group of friends getting together, and every single one is on their cell phones typing away. They're not even looking at each other, but we went out for dinner so we can spend quality time. Go on a city bus, go on a train. Everybody's got their gadgets. We used to meet people. We used to talk to people. We used to listen to people. There's a danger here of our eardrums, of our brain cells, and of our soul strings becoming too numb and too desensitized to be able to absorb sounds or ideas that really mean something, things that touch and affect us in a deep and profound way. Don't get me wrong, as I said before, technology is wonderful. It has improved the human condition on so many levels, billions of times over. Computers today are a necessity and are a magnificent asset to our lives, so long as they're being used for constructive purposes. But not everything in life can be reduced to a soundbite or to a colorful graphic on a screen. The fact is, we're not computers. We're not digits. We're not smartphones. We're human beings. We're Jews. We have minds. We have souls. We have lives. The question is, do we have what it takes to stop the madness? Do we have what it takes to talk to each other and to really talk? Do we still have what it takes to listen to each other, to really listen, to concentrate, to internalize an idea, an outlook on life? I remember a sermon that my father, Olav Shalom, gave in our shul years ago, and he explained that in Yiddish, there are 2 different words used to describe the act of listening. There is the Yiddish zu hören, and then there's zu der hören. They sound the same, they may mean the same, but they're very different. In Hebrew, there's the word lahazin and lishmoa. What's the difference? Lahazin, zu hören, simply refers to the mechanism of the sound waves reaching the eardrum. You hear the sound, you hear the noise. But zu der hören, lishmoa, means that not only is the ear hearing the sound and noises, but the mind is focusing. The mind is thinking about the words. The mind is absorbing. The mind is internalizing the message and making a resolution to act upon what's being said. A mother was sitting on her couch in the living room reading a newspaper, and her little girl came up to her and started to talk to her, trying to tell her something. You know, when your kid is carrying on and you're listening with half an ear and you say, yeah, honey, yeah, honey, yeah, honey. And this little child says, Mommy, you're not listening. And the mommy says, I'm listening to every word you said. No, you're not listening. And she says, I'm listening, dear. And the little girl says, "Mommy, you're not listening with your eyes." A child knows when you're listening. They see it in your eyes. Just this past Shabbos, I had my grandson on my lap, and he was doing the same thing. He was talking to me, and he was getting a little bit frustrated. And at some point, he took his hands, he put it to my face, and he pointed my face right at him, and he said the same thing right over again. They know if you're really listening. Zu der Herren. Are you listening with your eyes? To listen with your eyes means that the person that's talking to you knows that you're really there, that you're truly, genuinely interested in what he or she is saying. They see it in your eyes. Is there attentiveness in your eyes? Do you really care? A husband and wife were once at a party chatting with some friends when the subject of marriage counseling came up. So the husband says, "We'll never need it. My wife and I, we have a great relationship. You see, in college, she majored in communications. I majored in drama. She communicates well. I act like I'm listening." Seriously, now how many of us can sit in our offices or a place of business or at a coffee shop with a nice big smile on our faces? We have patience for everybody. A client is on the phone, we have patience. A buddy from across the hall pops in, we have patience. We sit, we schmooze, we chat about the weather, we chat about Trump, the stock market. The latest episode of America's Got Talent was solving all the world's problems. But the moment we walk through the door of our homes, mittamol, all of a sudden, this paragon of patience becomes the busiest, most preoccupied guy in the world. He's busy. He's very busy. He's got no time. Everything shuts off. Everything shuts down. There's no patience for the spouse, no patience for the children, no patience for the people who need us the most, who truly love us and respect us more than anyone else. The people in our lives for whom our input and opinions really, truly matter and make a world of difference. And when we do listen to them, are we listening with our eyes? Are we listening with our hearts? Are we listening with a sincere desire and a willingness to be there for them? There were these 5 couples who were sharing a van together, traveling to a wedding. As a terrible accident took place, and they all perished. They all came to the heavenly world at the same time. The men are told to form 2 lines. One line in heaven was for those whose wives boss them around, and the other line was for those whose wives don't tell them what to do. Sure enough, all of the men get on the line marked for those whose wives tell them everything what to do, all except one. So the 4 turned to their friend standing there all by himself. "Yankel, who you kidding? You're going to stand there?" He says, "I don't know. My wife told me to stand there, so I'm standing here." That's der Herren. 3 men were sitting together. They were bragging about how they'd given their wives duties, responsibilities. They were all 3 newlyweds. The first man married a Catholic woman, and he bragged. He had told his wife she was going to do all the dishes, and she had to do the cleaning of the house. He said it took a couple of days, but by the 3rd day he came home, the house was spotless, the dishes were done and put away. Very happy. The second man married a Mormon. He bragged that he gave his wife orders that she was to do all the cleaning, make sure the dishes were done, and I expect hot meals as soon as I come home from work. Said first day I didn't see any results. Second day, I got a little better. By the 3rd day, the house was clean, the dishes were done, dinner was on the table. It's perfect. Happy marriage. The 3rd man, Shepsel, married a Jewish girl. He boasted that he told her her duties were to keep the house clean, dishes washed, lawn mowed, laundry washed, hot meals on the table for every meal. He said the first day he didn't see anything. Second day, he didn't see anything. But by the 3rd day, most of the swelling had gone down, and he could see a little bit out of his left eye, enough to fix himself a bite to eat, load the dishwasher, and stop mowing the lawn. In a serious vein, though, what we're talking about is rediscovering a very important, vital, and essential art, the art of listening. You know, there are many times that there are people we know who have difficulties, real struggles. And very often, as much as we want to help, we simply don't have what it takes to solve their problems, to resolve their crisis. It's beyond our domain. But what we each can do, every single one of us, is listen. We can always listen. And we should never underestimate for one moment the infinite value of just that. How much it helps another human being when you just listen with your heart and listen with your eyes. I've been a rabbi now for 34 years, and I've seen firsthand how much pain can be alleviated, how much distress diminished when we're there to listen and to empathize. When we feel the plight of another, to the point that they know that they're not alone in their anguish and despair. A number of years ago, there was a JLI conference, and they rolled out one of their new courses then. There was a course called Beyond Never Again. It was a course on the Holocaust. And in this conference, to prepare all the instructors from all over the world for this particular course, they had a guest speaker. And I remember a story that he told. He said that during World War II, when the American forces were recapturing Europe, there was tremendous hunger and starvation all around. So the soldiers would have supplies of food with them to distribute to the liberated people. And they would also have a supply of Hershey chocolate bars to give out to the children. Children would be afraid of soldiers. And so this way, if a soldier handed a child a chocolate bar, it would create an ease of the fear. And besides, the kid hadn't seen a chocolate bar in years. So as the story goes, there was this American soldier whose battalion was about to liberate a concentration camp. And before they went in, the commander forewarned the platoon that what you're about to see will be like nothing you have ever seen in your lives before, and like nothing you will ever experience again. You will not believe that human beings could be capable of doing this to other human beings. The people you will see are but skin and bones. They have not eaten anything beyond scraps and morsels in years. Whatever you do, and as much as you want to load them up with food, and as much as you want to give the children those Hershey bars, you must not, you may not. Their systems would not be able to withstand it, and they could die as a result. They have to be slowly nourished back to health. And indeed, many did die in those days by eating too much too soon. So this soldier relates that when he came into the camp, this child, barely alive, totally shell-shocked, came up to him, begging for some food. And he describes how his heart was breaking. A starving, dying child. And he couldn't take out of his pocket to give him what this child was begging for. The soldier was crying on the inside. He said to the child, I don't have any food to give you. But you know what I can give you? I can give you a hug. He said, I put my arms around this child, and the child put his arms around me. And tears flowed down my cheeks. And then he said the most incredible thing happened. Suddenly another child came forth, and another child, and another child, until there was this line of children, each waiting with their hands outstretched for their hug. Sometimes even when we don't seem to have the answers or the healing that people need, we can still help. We can give them a hug. We can give them some human connection, some understanding. We can share their burden. if only we're ready to listen. The great Hasidic masters explained that in addition to the obvious psychological benefits, there's also a very powerful spiritual force in play when we listen to and we empathize with our fellow. Powerful enough to actually affect actual physical change. Let me share with you a story. In the mid-1980s, there was a woman who lived in the city of Tzfat, Israel. She had been married for 8 years, but had only been blessed with one child. And she and her husband desperately wanted to have more children. But unfortunately, no such blessing came their way. One day, she attended a lecture in Jerusalem that was given by an American-born rabbi. And she was very moved by the rabbi's talk, very touched and very inspired. So after the lecture, she asked him if she could speak to him in private for a few moments. The rabbi sat off to the side with her, and the floodgates just opened wide. She cried her heart out about wanting another child, and it's been 8 years, and no such blessing is coming. And finally she says to this rabbi, I want you to give me a bracha. I want you to give me a blessing that my husband and I should merit to bring another child into this world. The rabbi listened very sympathetically, but then apologetically explained that he was just not that type of rabbi. He gives talks, he gives lectures, he gives classes, but brachas meant a rebbe. A rebbe I'm not. I don't want to fool you. I'm not one of the Hasidic masters. I don't give brachas. I'm just a rabbi. I give talks. And the woman wouldn't accept this explanation. She said, no, the words you said touched me deeply. And I feel that somehow my answer will come through you. Besides, I don't know any Hasidic rebbes. Right now I know you. So I want a blessing from you. The man was very uncomfortable with the request, but as much as he tried to explain his inadequacy, that he was incapable of giving such a spiritual blessing, the woman was persistent. The rabbi thought for a moment and finally said, okay, here's the way it is. I want you to know that the pain you expressed to me today strikes a very sensitive chord within me. You see, I have a similar source of pain in my own life. I have a daughter. She lives in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She's been married for 10 years and hasn't borne any children. And I know how much this hurts her, and I know how much pain this brings to her and her husband, and the loneliness and the desire and the want for the child. I may not be a rebbe. I may not be qualified to give blessings, but I know this. The Talmud teaches us that if one has a problem and prays for a friend who has that same problem, his own problems will be answered as well. So let's make a deal. You will pray for my daughter, that she has a child, and I will pray the same for you. At that point, the woman's heart broke into a million pieces, no longer over her own plight, but for the pain of this rabbi's daughter who hadn't had a child in 10 years. And she promised the rabbi that it's a deal. Every single day, she would pray for the rabbi's daughter in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They exchanged names. They exchanged the names of the daughter in Milwaukee. They took all the Hebrew names of the family, and they promised each other that they would pray for one another. Time passed. Eventually, the rabbi's daughter in Milwaukee adopted a child. Yet even as the years passed, the rabbi never forgot about the anguish of the woman he'd met that night in Jerusalem, and of the arrangement that he made, and of the prayers that he would say every single day. As time went on, the contact between them just stopped. No information continued to go back and forth, but they each continued their prayers. One day, 5 years after that lecture night, the rabbi receives an amazing piece of news. Miracle of miracles. His daughter in Milwaukee was expecting her first biological child. The entire family was ecstatic. But in the back of his mind, he wondered, about the woman from that lecture. A few days later, a letter arrives from Tzfas, Israel. This is what the woman wrote. Rabbi, I would like you to know that I was just informed at long last that I am with child. I wanted you to be the first to know. All the rabbi could do was smile. Unbelievable. But our story doesn't end there. You see, the doctors had given the rabbi's daughter a due date of the first day of the Hebrew month of Shvat for the arrival of her child. As it turns out, the baby, a beautiful, healthy little girl, arrived 2 weeks later than expected. She was born on the 15th of Shvat, otherwise known as Tu B'Shvat. A few days later, the rabbi receives a telephone call from an excited woman in Tzfas. Her doctors had given her a due date, but her little package arrived earlier than expected. Rabbi, just a few days ago, my husband and I welcomed our new son to this world. The rabbi asks, and what was the date of birth? The boy was born on the 15th of Shvat. An infant girl in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. A newborn boy in Tzfat, Israel. One seemed to have arrived late, the other early. Or were their arrivals synchronized by something higher than physical due dates? Because one Jew listened and internalized and felt in the deepest way about the plight of another, these two precious children will forever be united by their own special standard of time. This is what happens when we truly listen. What is the most basic and fundamental prayer in the Jewish religion? Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. We often translate it as, Hear, O Israel. But Shema doesn't simply mean hear. Shema means to listen, to personalize, to internalize, to listen, O Israel. The Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Shema Yisrael means that as Jews we have to know what to tune in and what to tune out. That we tune in Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, that we tune in the voices that beckon us to a higher place in life, that call upon us to learn more about our Jewish heritage, our history, our destiny, to tune in the voices of our spouses and our children, to tune in the calls and the cries of our fellow human beings who need our caring and our compassion and our help, and to tune out some of the other noise, to tune out the distractions, to tune out some of the mishigasin. Shema Yisrael, we're Jews. For us, the art of listening should be more than just an art. It should be at the core of what we're all about. There was a rabbi in Brooklyn, New York. His name was Rabbi Bernard Berzin. Rabbi Berzin writes that there was a member of his congregation who always walked around with a very sad and broken expression on his face. And he always tried to ask him what's on his mind, what was there lying so heavily on his heart. And one day the man finally opened up and told his story. I was born in Poland. I came to America during the Great Depression. I worked hard, I built up a business, and I did well for myself. In 1939, I received an urgent letter from my only brother still back in Poland. He told me that the situation was really beginning to look grim for the Jews of Eastern Europe. He begged me to provide an affidavit for himself and for his wife and his 2 children to emigrate to the United States. But at the time, I was busy. I was just too busy. And besides, I knew that if my brother would come with his family, he would be coming with nothing. And chances were I would have to provide for them. And I was reluctant to do that. And I didn't take it seriously enough, and I didn't stop to think what we were really talking about there. And then he broke down. My brother, my sister-in-law, my niece, my nephew were all cremated at Auschwitz. And I haven't known a day's peace since. Nor will I ever have a day of peace for the rest of my days. I heard my brother's voice. I heard the warning. I heard the pleading. I heard, but I didn't listen. On July 18th, 2005, an article appeared in the newspaper U.S. News and World Report. The writer's name was Dan Gilgoff. Dan Gilgoff wrote, just after a tropical storm, it was called Tropical Storm Cindy, had passed through New Orleans without becoming a hurricane. And he writes, we dodged a bullet there, but the next time we may not be so lucky. And then he goes on to explain that if a Category 5 hurricane were to ever strike the region, the entire city of New Orleans could be submerged in water. He wrote this 1 month, a mere month before Katrina. Who took him seriously? Who listened? When we hear of looming danger, be it in our physical lives or our spiritual lives, we have to hear what's being said. We must listen, we must internalize, we must take heart, we must do something about it before it's too late. How many times do we find ourselves saying to ourselves, if only we would have listened, if only we would have listened to our parents, if only we would have listened to our Bubby and to our Zaidi, if only we would have listened to our rabbis and rebbitzins, if only we would have listened to our friends, if only we would have listened to our children. If only we would have recognized that if we want our own children and grandchildren to grow up to be proud and identifiable Jews, they need to understand what that means. They need to know their history. They need to understand their mission, their purpose in this world, and what it's all about. They need to know that being Jewish means a lot more than just being a distant cousin to Jerry Seinfeld, or to Wonder Woman, or to Ivanka Trump. They need to know that for them, Israel is more than just a hot spot on the globe. It's a land that's tied to their very essence. They need to know that Judaism has infinitely more depth than just gefilte fish or chopped liver or bar and bat mitzvah parties. We can't wait until it's too late. We can't wait until the spiritual levees in our lives get overflooded. The floods of aimlessness, of assimilation, of apathy. We have to act before the crisis. We have to take active measures and secure ourselves and our families to be more proactive, because it's a lot easier than being reactive. So we have to listen. Listen to your soul. Listen to our souls telling us that it's time to come home and live our lives, our Jewish lives, to the fullest, to give our family and our community and our God the time and attention that they need from us, to give our children the education they require. We can't wait for the levees to break. We have to act now. A closing story. There were these 4 businessmen from Cleveland who made travel plans together to go to New York for a trade show. The trade show happened to have been on Rosh Chodesh Elul, coming up in about 2 weeks. It's an auspicious day of the month. Special prayers are recited. The shofar is blown as well. So being observant Jews, these 4 businessmen planned it so they can catch an early flight out of Cleveland. They'll still be able to go to a synagogue in Manhattan, pray with a minyan there, and still be able to be at the trade show at its opening time of 9 a.m. Well, not everything always goes as planned. The organizer of the 4 of this trip was a guy named Mordechai. Let's call him Mordechai, the organizer. He was supposed to swing around and pick up the other 3 at 5 a.m. to catch the 6 o'clock flight. Apparently, Mordechai hit the snooze button once too many times that morning, and he overslept. So at 5:30, one of the other passengers comes to the house, pounds on the door, and Mordechai jumps out of bed. What are you doing sleeping? We got to catch a flight. Mordechai, the organizer, says, you guys run ahead. You guys catch the flight. Hopefully I'll make it. If not, you go ahead. So the 3 race to the airport. Mordechai races to put on his clothes, splash some water on his face, put his bag together, and get into his taxi to get to the airport as well. The 3 make it to the plane on time. They get on the flight. They take their seats, and they're waiting. They're looking down the aisle. They see they're about to close the door, and at the last second, Mordechai, the organizer, jumps right through the door. He made it. Great, back on schedule. Plane takes off from Cleveland's Hopkins Airport in perfect weather. After a short while, the captain's voice comes over the intercom announcing that there's a thick blanket of clouds, a fog over the New York area. Houston, we got a problem. I'll keep you posted, said the captain. In the meantime, the flight attendants and the passengers start talking about alternate routes. Maybe we're going to land in Newark Airport. If we land in Newark Airport, the four businessmen are thinking, is there a shul near Newark Airport? Can we get to a minyan near Newark Airport? Does anyone know a shul near Newark? What's the closest shul? Should we stop the shul? Should we get to Manhattan? Is there a later minyan? What should we going to do? They're all worried about their minyan for Rosh Chodesh. Captain gets back on. The fog has now traveled westward over New Jersey as well. Kennedy, LaGuardia, and Newark, all airports are closed, those three. We're not landing in the New York area. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have to be landing this plane in Washington, D.C. So much for planning their minyan for Rosh Chodesh Elul. Not the best of news. These four businessmen were a little bit disappointed. So they need to come up with a contingency plan. On board this plane, they see other Hasidic Jews. These Hasidim were originally from New York. They were in Cleveland for Shabbos. They spent Shabbos with their Hasidic Rebbe, and now they're on their way back. So realizing that by the time they would land in Washington and catch somehow a way to get to New York, it's going to be quite late, the group decides that they should probably try to see if they can make a minyan in the airport in Washington, D.C., right when they land. And they start counting bodies. How many do we got? We're 4. They start going up and down, counting the other Hasidim. 1, 2, 3, or the way we do it, Hoshia es Samecha. They're counting down for the minyan, and sure enough, they have exactly 10. Keep in mind, they have exactly 10 only because Mordechai made it in at that very last second. They got 10. They spread the word. As soon as we get off the plane, we're going to find a corner. We're going to make a minyan there. At least we'll have a daven with a minyan. We won't have Kriyas HaTorah, but at least we'll have a minyan. The plane lands in Washington's Dulles Airport. They find a corner of the room in the terminal. These 10 men take out their talis and film, and they begin to daven as inconspicuous as possible. But 10 men with a talis and film in the airport is not inconspicuous. Everyone stops to look. Everyone is like passing by. They're looking, they're staring. What are these guys up to? In the midst of the prayers, this very distinguished-looking gentleman, dressed in a nice suit, carrying his attaché case, is staring at them, and he's staring, and he's staring. And finally he walks up to this group and he says, would you mind if I recited the Kaddish at your minyan? These folks were taken aback. He hardly looked Jewish. Didn't look like someone that would know what Kaddish even means. But they said, of course, no problem at all. Mordechai gave the man a kippah and gave him a siddur. He took off his own talis and tefillin early so he could put it on him so that he would be able to wear tefillin and put on the talis. And as soon as it came to the place where the mourner's Kaddish is recited, Mordechai helps him start saying the words Yiskadal v'Yiskadash. And the moment he opened his mouth to utter the words, he breaks down sobbing. Such emotion, bursting into tears. And he struggles through every single word of the Kaddish, but he says it completely. Mordechai says, you know, there's not just one place that the mourner's Kaddish is recited. There are a few more. Would you like to stay? And he says, yeah. And each time he says Kaddish, the tears come up all over again. And finally, the services are over, and one of the Hasidic approached the man, introduces himself, and says, please excuse me if I'm imposing, but may I ask, why are you so broken? What's weighing so heavily on your heart? So the man replied, my father died just a few days ago. He was a simple man. He was a good man. Last night I had this very intense dream. My father came to me and he said, Robert, why aren't you saying Kaddish for me? So in the dream I said, Dad, I didn't even know how to read Hebrew. I wouldn't know what to say. And besides, there's no synagogues near where I live. And I'm always traveling on business. How, when, where could I possibly say Kaddish? And all my father would say, Robert, why aren't you say Kaddish for me? And I kept on giving him excuses. I don't have a way to do that. And finally he says, Robert, if I send you a minyan, would you say Kaddish for me? And I said, of course. And then I woke up. It was an intense dream. It was very real, but I woke up. It wasn't real. It was just a dream. Just a dream. And then I come here to the airport to catch my flight. And before my eyes, there it is. A minyan, a quorum that my Father sent so that I can say Kaddish for him. My friends, throughout our lives, our parents, our grandparents who are in heaven, they send us messages. When they departed, they didn't just walk off the stage of life, never to be heard from again, God forbid. That's not what we believe. That's not our faith. We believe they're here with us, not merely as distant memories to pay homage to, but as active partners in our life. They're here with us. They're guiding us. They're encouraging us. And they plead with us. They are heavily invested in our lives and the choices we make and the actions we take. And they depend on us to carry the legacy of their souls forward. Through us, they live on. Through us, their destiny is realized. And they talk to us. The question is, are we listening? Are we truly listening? Shema Yisrael. Let us stop. Let us listen. Let us internalize the message. And then let us act. Thank you very much.